I basically, as a leader of a major political party, is fearful that I'll be arrested by my government for literally doing nothing.
All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Today with me, I have the leader of the UWP in Dominica, Thomson Fontaine. And I tell you, Dominica, for me, is basically, I'm seeing it as in a crisis. I spoke with a journalist who told me former politician was on Friday locked up and released on Sunday on $30,000 bail. Charge was a illegal gathering. That's what I gathered from the journalist. How does a bill on electoral reform transcend into all of this?
Thank you, and thanks for having me. Well, on Wednesday of last week was the time for the second and third readings of the electoral reform bills in Dominica's parliament. We have been at this for over 20 years, seeking electoral reform. Finally, we get a bill that goes to parliament. By the end of the day, we're not satisfied with the contents of the bill because we don't believe it provides real reform. It still allows the government to employ the same means they have employed over the past several election cycles to win the election. So we call our supporters out in a peaceful protest on Wednesday of last week. It turns out that there was a small skirmish between those who were assembled and the police, who had set up barricades preventing us access to the parliament building. They basically barred off all the entrances and so on, kept us very far away, in fact, from parliament. And out of frustration, the persons began to shake the barriers. In response, the police opened fire with rubber bullets and tear gas. In the process, several persons were injured. One individual that I think that has gone viral was actually bitten by the police, knocked out cold, and set upon by other police officers. And at the end of the day, several individuals were arrested, including, as you rightly indicated, our former deputy leader of the party and a former MP, five-term MP for the Salisbury constituency. He was arrested along with three other individuals. These individuals were kept over the weekend, brought to court on Monday. They went to court. They were given bail with the exception of one individual who had a prior issue with the courts, so he was put on remand. The others released. We thought that was the end of it. Unfortunately, the police yesterday decided to mount another attack and basically went around the country, taking up our supporters, arresting them, including one of our more senior members, a former MP, three-time MP for the Roseau North constituency, Danny Lugue, Honorable Danny Lugue. He was picked up along with some of the key organizers of the protest on Wednesday. In total, 6 of them were picked up yesterday. We have been told that there are others on the list, including myself and some of the other leaders of the party. So we have been waiting around today to see what will happen. But we expect the police to move in with more arrests. They've been charged under an 1889 statute in the Riot Act that dates back to the year 1889. That basically says that if 12 or more assembled lawfully, they can be prosecuted in disturbance of the peace.
But this is madness in the Caribbean that we say is evolving, and we're moving on past colonial era. Because when I look at that Riot Act, if you look at the original one, it was I think it was the Act of 1714. That means that takes you all the way back to slavery, really.
Absolutely.
What I'm saying, I looked at the act, and basically the UK was saying, look, we remove that, we repeal that, we abolish that. We have the Criminal Law Act now in the UK where they can deal with protests and stuff like that, but it's even more lenient now. So why do we still have these laws on the books in these Caribbean islands? What is the reason for it, though?
Well, I suspect it's because, and for reasons like this, if a government wants to suppress its people, what other way to do it than to find cover in some act? Archaic as it is, outdated as it is, but it does allow them some cover, because they can now say there were more than 12 of you. We were several hundred, several thousand people there. There were 12 of you that were gathered unlawfully, and because there was that back and forth with the police, then you were causing a riot, So it is quite interesting, because not one policeman got hurt, not one policeman was hit by the protesters, not one. There was no violence on the part of the protesters. They were the ones who were receiving violence from the police because they were fired upon. and yet the government finds cover. So that's why they maintain those kinds of rules, especially a government like ours that has been in office for the past 25 years and is seeking every possible means of staying in office. And so when you're so desperate, you do those kinds of things. You rely on these kinds of outdated statutes to keep the people in bondage.
But I am hearing from a few people that the protesters did not get the necessary rights to protest. That's what they were saying, permission to protest. And if you read the act, it's saying that this act would have helped the government not to allow people to protest too near to the parliament, basically. I want to go back to the bills because you said that they were going to pass these bills, and these bills are passed, right?
They've already passed.
Right. So, but I want you to go back as well to tell me, because you mentioned earlier that there were some things in it that the people just did not agree with, basically.
Right. So two things there, and the one on the bill itself, I'll just start with that. What the bill allows for is to allow elections under the same bloated list that we have. Dominica has a population of roughly 70,000 people. Our voters list is approximately 75,000, because there are people on there, many persons who have died, many persons who have migrated. We have a very high rate of migration in Dominica, who have migrated, who do not qualify, yet they remain on the list. What this new legislation allows for is that if you're on this list, you remain on the list during what they call a reconfirmation period, where individuals who are on that list will have an opportunity not to be removed, but to simply reconfirm themselves. So if, for example, I've been overseas for 25 years, I can get the forms, reconfirm that's in fact me, and then I'm issued a voter ID card. So that keeps me on that list.
Wow.
Beyond that, it allows the government within that process of re-registration, reconfirmation, which will last about 12 months. It allows the government to call a snap election if they see fit. And in the event of a snap election, the list that will prevail is that same bloated voters list, even before it is cleansed. So that is the issue there. That is one. And then on the issue of seeking permission, we do not need permission in Dominica to gather peacefully, because under Article 1B of our Constitution, we are allowed to gather without seeking government permission. Permission is only required under the Public Order Act if you're going to have a procession. So, for example, if you're having a procession in town which will obstruct traffic and so on, you have to get permission for that. But if it's simply a meeting or gathering, we are covered under Article 1B of the Constitution. And that's the reason why the Constitution now seems to be in conflict with this Riot Act. And one of the measures that we are taking is to go to the courts to get a determination, understanding that the Riot Act seems to be violating our basic fundamental human right, and that is having the right to oppose our government, having the right to gather together to do that.
I'm smiling because I'm seeing this playbook being used around the Caribbean now. I'm seeing it where the acts are clashing with the constitutional rights of people and whether they're actually being used correctly. What I noticed under this Riot Act as well is that there's indemnification for politicians or for people who are using it. So the police can lick me up. He's not going to jail.
Yes, there must be a problem, because as you rightly said, for example, we have on videotape one of the police officers striking a protester who was walking alongside another police officer. He came from behind and slammed him right there in his head.
Wow.
He fell down, and two other policemen rushed him and started beating him up right there. None of these individuals have been reprimanded. One of the individuals who was arrested yesterday, when they asked him, what am I being arrested for? They said, you're being arrested because you were present, not because you threw a projectile or you roughed up the police or you shook the barriers. You're being arrested simply because you were present at the rally. So that sends a chilling message, and people are in fear because everybody that was at that protest now thinks that they can get that knock at their door. So they're using the laws to be very oppressive. Because what we have is a lot of fear. But countless supporters have been calling fraud yesterday and today, concerned about their own safety, concerned about whether or not they'll be arrested. And what has been happening with this government, for example, is that when they arrest you, you don't even get due process right away. They're using another part of the law that allows you to hold a suspect for 72 hours.
72 hours.
Yeah, before being charged. Okay, so they're applying that to those protesters. So protesters who were held yesterday, although they have been questioned by the police, they are refraining from charging them until Friday. They would have stayed the full 72 hours in jail. They would get bail on the Friday. But if it does not happen on the Friday, they would have to spend an entire additional weekend in jail and come out on Monday. So it is being used to punish the protesters. It is being used to send a message of fear that you are not allowed to protest. You're not allowed to stand up against Roosevelt's carrot. And if you do so, you will be punished. Your rights will be taken away from you. Your freedom will be taken away from you for at least 4 days. You will sleep in a dirty cell. You will be subject to all of these inhumane conditions. And at the end of the day, the government gets away scot-free.
So effectively, they're killing protests. They're intimidating the population. So you really don't stand up against me, or you'll feel the wrath of me.
Right.
And this has to stop. And but one of the things that I am concerned about, because I got some calls from people in Dominica who would say to me, if you have to clarify, there's effectively no opposition in Dominica. They're saying that the opposition basically gave Roosevelt Skerritt the right to do what he's doing today because of their lack of participation in some of the political processes, like an election where they did not participate in it. So they're saying, how do you answer that charge?
Right. Okay, so again, because of the lack of electoral reform,
right,
because of the process that has been used, because the way this government has been able to win office is that they look at the voters list, they look at marginal constituencies, and then they simply go overseas and charter flights, spend millions of dollars. They charter flights from the United States, from the US Virgin Islands. They bring in ferries from Antigua, Guadeloupe, and Martinique, and so on, because they have boundless amounts of monies to do that, and they effectively win constituencies which they otherwise would not win.
Correct.
But they do that because of the voters list. From the year 2000, every observer mission in Dominica has indicated that there are problems with our voter process. In 2019, we finally got the CCJ to look at it. They said that there should be no future elections in Dominica with those states if they are not cured. They said that they were very clear. There should be no future elections in Dominica without cleanup, without reform.
Without reform.
Right? So in 2022, we had a choice. We could either defy the CCJ's opinion, or we could side with the government knowing full well that we're going to lose. Because in 2022, after a 2019 election, 3 years later, they called a snap election, in which they would be guaranteed a victory because they would go by the same playbook.
Right.
We thought that the only chance we had of pushing the agenda of reform is to boycott. That is the most extreme form of protest that they can take, not to contest. And that's the reason, that's why we did not take part in it. So in the absence of the largest party taking part, a few independent persons went up independently, and 2 of those independent voters won in our strongholds, in 2 of our stronghold constituencies. There were 2 elected, but they're independents. They are not part of the party, and that is why. So that's why there is no representation in Parliament into the opposition. And also, I'm sure you're aware of it, the same thing in St. Vincent. This system that we have is not a good system for our countries. Is that because it's a winner takes all.
That's correct.
The government in power has the full control. They don't listen to the opposition. They don't back you. Even if you have a better proposal than theirs, they will not take it on because you brought it forward as the opposition. They pass all the bills that they want to do. They run roughshod over the opposition in Parliament. So why continue with that sham when you know that there are no results to be had from being in Parliament? And rather than send a message to the locals, the region, and the rest of the world that we have a broken system in Dominica. And we believe it's on the strength of not taking part in 2022 that they were forced to do something. But at the end of the day, we got something, and we are still not satisfied because it does not go far enough.
Are you going to take part in the next election that's coming? Would
We
they
most
come in?
likely will, because we've made our point already as far as abstaining is concerned.
Right.
We believe now that the majority of people in Dominica, that we have seen a substantial movement away from the Labour Party government to our side. So we believe that if we strategize well, if we're able to get that message to the people, and also we're working very hard on telling persons who otherwise would come, we have been appealing to them, pleading with them not to continue doing so, showing them, the damage it has done to democracy and so on. So we're hopeful if all of the efforts that we are undertaking, we will limit the number of persons coming from overseas, and that based on the persons living within Dominica who would vote, we believe that we have the majority and will in fact win the next election.
So you mentioned a couple of things about persons coming in. The list is bloated, and if their constituency that they see looking a little bit shaky, they could get people to come in from overseas, fill those,
Right.
and win those seats. Have you
Right.
ever? I'm quite sure. Do you have evidence of these things, and have you ever taken any of these things to court?
That is where, and that's the reason why we have been so, we were forced to do what we did, because every single election we have done those petitions
Ah, okay.
where we get the names of the persons who are not supposed to be on the list to vote. We have persons who have voted, who voted twice. We got affidavits and all that. We present those as petitions at the end within 2009, 2014, 2019. We present those as petitions to the local court system, and what happens? They either do not hear it in time, because there is a certain amount of time within which it must be heard, or if they do hear it, they throw it aside. Where we have clear and strong evidence, we have pictures of the plane loads of the planes coming in. We have pictures of the individuals who are not supposed to be registered in the constituency on the polling day, and so on. You have overwhelming evidence. The court simply turns aside because our judiciary in Dominica has been compromised, especially at the magistracy level. Persons are given contracts by the Prime Minister, year-on-year contracts. So if these individuals don't do according to what the government expect them to do, they are simply let go. Others come in. So people understand the way they need to behave, and no judge, no magistrate has been brave enough to challenge this government. In the one instance, when we got the court to look at it, and that was the issue of the citizenship of the Prime Minister, because he has dual. He was a French citizen and also a Dominican citizen. This one time we got to go to court. When it got for the judge to make a ruling, when our lawyers asked for the Prime Minister to present his French passport, which we knew that he had, the judge said basically that we were the ones to get the passport, not the Prime Minister.
The burden of proof is on you.
Yeah, we were the ones to show. So we had to find a way somehow to get the passport of the Prime Minister, not to us. All she had to do was to simply ask the Prime Minister to present his passport. She refused to do that. You see, so even then, it shows you how much this court system has been lopsided. So there was no relief for us in the courts. It is clear that after doing that 3 times in a row, getting the same results, the courts were not good. And that's the reason why we boycotted the last election, with the hope that we would force the reforms and have a level playing field.
What is it that you wanted inside of the reforms?
One of the key things that we asked for was on the voters list. We wanted the voters list to be scrapped completely, and then you have a process of re-registration. So everybody who qualifies would re-register within 3 or 4 months, and then if you want to call a snap election, you can go ahead and have your election. That has been done in Antigua. It has been done I'm not sure in St. Vincent, but I know in Grenada, a few countries, you've had the re-registration process. It's a very quick and easy process that will satisfy us all. We also wanted voter ID cards that they have granted, so we are happy for that. We also wanted access to the radios, to the national radio station, because every past election we have been denied. Even when we pay, even when we offer huge sums of money, they would not take our money. We would not go on the other radio station, on the national radio station that has the biggest reach throughout the country. This time it has been granted in this, so we are happy for this. We also wanted some controls on bribery and treating. That has not been taken into account. Campaign finance, because the government, again, in some instances, making use of our CBI resources, been able to spend $20 million, $25 million and bringing voters in. Monies that as an opposition will never have access to. And so, all of that we wanted, none of that we have. And so that's why we continue to fight and ask that the bill be repealed and that
Yeah.
we get the just legislation so that this country can be settled politically and that we can move on with our lives.
Yeah, I was thinking to myself that re-registration would have been the major plank of any electoral reform.
Absolutely.
What is the plan going forward? Because if there are elements within the police service who are willing to just, maybe just look at people and say, well, you can't protest, take away my right to protest. You need sometimes, as an opposition party, they would tell you that if you have the security forces on your side, if they're seeing that things are not really well, you stand a better chance of winning than if they're keeping side with the government. And people say that all over the world. But how do you look going forward for the next election in terms of population response, even people within certain services of government? How do you look? Are you seeing the movement towards a different government?
Yes, we are seeing it, but it will be fraught with danger. Or people are getting increasingly angry at the way their rights are being curtailed. Or Dominican people are very smart people. They understand their rights.
Right.
And when they see their rights being taken away from them, they're very, very angry about it. So it is possible that down the line we could see bloodshed in Dominica over this, simply because of the way the police forces are responding. They don't appear to be respecting the rights of individuals. There are people who may want to take matters into their own hands. I mean, that is it. In fact, in the same ruling of the CCJ, they indicated that where you have this kind of repression, it does result in violence. It does result in disruptions in society, because people at some point want that freedom. They want that right to choose their own government.
Correct.
And if that is continuously being refused, they may do things. So there is that danger. But I believe that we can avert all of that by the government repealing those bills and giving us those legislation that will have a level playing field so that everybody can actually compete on this level playing field. Beyond that, we have to keep agitating as a party. We have to keep on doing our work within the communities. We'll have a relentless campaign of education, of talking to the public, of really mobilizing support among the communities, because we believe that if we do that, that is one sure way of overcoming the issue of this government and its attitude of the police state and so on. We believe that we can make it that way, because we have a lot of sympathy on the ground, a lot of people who want a change of government, who are tired of this government, and who want to see us move forward.
You mentioned if people can't get a chance to release that righteous indignation, as the people call it in politics, you could see riots. I was reading something about a 1979 riot in Dominica. Was that over politics as well?
Yes, it was. It resulted at that time in the removal of, ironically, a Labour Party government that was in office.
Wow.
The Prime Minister was forced to resign as a result. But at that time, a lot of the efforts were led by the trade unions, and they were able to shut the country down. So you had very effective control. Now our unions are very ineffective. People are afraid to go on strike. No one is talking about going on strike and so on. They're afraid of the government, because when that has happened, persons have been fired, they have lost their jobs. So again, it's just an atmosphere of fear and repression that we have in Dominica, that people are forced to live under this current regime.
But are you fearful that you could see another 1979? Are you fearful?
Yes, I'm very fearful of it. I'm very fearful. I'm seeing the same conditions, the same repressive type of government that we had in 1979 when we had this big outroar. It's the same thing we are seeing now. One of the main difference, though, is that the police at that time they were more independent. It was a professional police force, so that when the problem started, they simply stepped aside and allowed people to deal with the issues. Now we see a police force that is ready and willing to use brute force, to use live ammunition. They did not use it in this past time, but in a previous protest in 2019, they did use live ammunition. So it shows that willingness for them to act on behalf to protect this government. So that has to be taken into any kind of consideration. Anytime we're thinking of having protest action, that must be taken into consideration.
What do you think about the treatment of journalists in Dominica? I mean, worldwide, the reports are always saying every year that appear that journalists are coming more and more under threat from regimes. What is it like in Dominica?
Yeah, again, we saw the shameful behavior of the police against a local journalist when she was, basically manhandled and so on because she was taking pictures of the police and trying to document what was going on. A complete disregard for the freedom of the press, a complete disregard for persons who were just doing their work. And that's another sad chapter in Dominica's history, the behavior of the police. So we are putting a lot of focus now on that part of it because we believe, for example, that the police are getting their orders from the political directorate. All of those arrests we are seeing are political because none of these individuals that have been arrested did anything wrong. None of them hit the police. None of them, broke anything. They did not destroy buildings. They did not set fires. None of that happened. Yet they've been brought before the court because the political directorate has ordered them to do so. So we are putting a lot of focus now on how we can deal with that kind of behavior and how we can get the police to be more responsive to us. And part of what we see happening has been systematic because the government of Dominica, because they've been in office for so long, have been able to promote officers who are loyal to them at the detriment of other professional police officers. So you have individuals in very high office who know nothing but policing, but who are there because they will die, so to speak, for the prime minister. They will put their lives on the line for the prime minister. And they're the ones that have found favor. They're the ones that are running the police service or police service in complete disarray. Crimes go unsolved. A whole sort of thing. Everything happens. But when it comes to taking care of the opposition, myself, I was arrested. I spent 4 days because we had a protest that was going back to 2017 that ended peacefully. I was arrested, 8 years in jail. We only got relief in the High Court last week when the High Court asked that every single charge be dropped. So, finally we were able to go before the High Court and they dropped all the charges and so on. But that shows you the kind of persecution that you go through, and the police is helping, the judiciary is helping. That case could have been dismissed at the magistracy level. Yet we went through the whole process of the preliminaries in the magistrate's court just to go to the High Court to be told the High Court says you don't have a case, the government has no case, but it shows where we are. It's, when you have that kind of repressive system and it boils down to just having a government in place for too long. That's the reason why when we become a government, we will put in term limits because I honestly believe that no one person should be able to serve for more than 2 terms as prime minister. Let there be a different thinking. If the country wants to keep electing the same individual, the same party, they're free to do so. But in terms of the leadership of that party, it would have to change.
I was going to ask you what is the main difference between the UWP and the DLP and what you will be able to offer the Dominicans going ahead in terms of, this election coming up. Yeah. But you said something that was striking there. Term limits, everybody's asking for it across the Caribbean. Too much.
Absolutely.
I want to thank you for coming on today with me, man, and giving me an update on what's taking place in Dominica. And I smile. You see me smiling a lot because a lot of things you're saying is just reminiscent of what is taking place.
Yeah. Well, just to say, let me say a big thank you to you and to people in St. Vincent that have been concerned about us. We're getting a lot of calls from the region. People who are rightly concerned about what is going on in Dominica, who are looking at the curtailing of our rights here in Dominica. I mean, I basically, as a leader of a major political party, is fearful that I'll be arrested by my government for literally doing nothing. So it's very concerning, and I really appreciate the support of the region because we believe that helps a lot in keeping this government on the straight and narrow. So we just want to thank you for your advocacy and thank the people that have continued to support us because we're in this struggle together.
Thomson Fontaine, leader of the UWP opposition party in Dominica. Thanks for being with me today and hope
to have
another time in the future.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Appreciate it.